I've got 30 minutes, I think. So I'm Amanda Duncan and I'm the founder of a creative writing platform. And today's topic was very dear to my heart. It was the opportunity for storytelling on the go. And I just wanted to kick off really quickly about the background and the reason why ScribeEasy, our platform, was founded. But I'd like to start with a little story. A few weeks back, I went with my son and a few other parents who have quite neurodivergent children. And we went for a walk along the Thames. And there we found, we were just mudlarking, and the things that we found were really quite wonderful. We didn't really know what we were looking for. On the way back, I saw a man who was a professional. He had a electric, what do you call them? A metal detector, thank you. And he had a proper bag and a box of things, so we asked him what he'd found. And what struck me was he pulled out the artefacts, and he'd found some horse's teeth, some Elizabeth musket balls, and some dress pins. Now, the dress pins are tiny, and it was fascinating, so we decided to go back and have a look and retrace our steps. And my goodness, because our eyes were peeled, we found horse's teeth, dress pins, and Elizabeth musket balls. And what struck me was that we were actively looking, and the difference between seeing and looking. And I think it's something in everyday life we just take for granted, where there's well-being is so much on everyone's lips, but actually being present in the moment, but also having time to plan just a little bit before you do something. So storytelling on the go is, a really wonderful way to start meeting people where they're at. So you can observe a lot by observing. And for storytelling on the go, every journey becomes an opportunity. And following a passion is very important for children. Often you don't realise how much by following one interest you can cover so many topics. Maths, sequencing, vocabulary, whether you start to use active and passive sentences, so helping children understand communication. Just as a teacher or as a parent, starting to think, observing their patterns and then looking for the ways that you can communicate with the learner to help overcome difficulties or things that they might be struggling with. This was quite a fun, and this is setting you up for what we're going to look at in ScribeEasy, but one of the things that we really work on is the 4 C's around education. So communication, collaboration, communication, collaboration, creativity, and I forgot. Critical thinking, which was why I just had the slide before, which is what, if you're on the go, if you saw a cow and you saw a butterfly, what would happen if you crossed them? And suddenly you've got connected thinking going. And that is one of the things that started me as the founder to invent ScribeEasy. It's a picture blending method. I come from a background of visual effects, and I actually trained in ceramics. And I didn't do so well at school. I ended up with a degree and a master's in art. But actually, I failed my chemistry, I failed maths. But when I got to the Royal College of Art, suddenly I was excelling in chemistry. I was excelling in my language skills. Because I was passionate, and I learned through play all sorts of possibility, all sorts of ways of learning. And I think there's a real place, it's not always easy in a curriculum to, when we're following that, we're bound by teaching children in a very particular way, we're boxing them. And actually the idea of storytelling on the go opens up lots of possibilities. So ScribeEasy is a platform. We've got a stand outside, so you can come and have a look, and I can also give you a really quick overview of what's within it. But it's an immersive platform where you can create, there's lots of immersive settings, and you can drop information in, so visuals, and add information so that children can find a tour around a little place, learn about something in a really fun way, and then have a little tiny quiz, for example, for comprehension, and then they go into what we call is a story pack. And in the story pack, we've got background settings and objects, and the children then, or the learner can then invent their own scene and make that topic quite personal to them. So it's a way to visualise spelling lists, to group images into themes, and to use photography, so the storytelling can start long before you've got even into the classroom. What we all want to see are actively engaged learners who are progressing, and this is why storytelling on the go is really important. You can start to see patterns around, what children are moving towards, what they like, what they collect. And I think it's interesting to think, what is communication? It's gone backwards. We've got our 4 C's: critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, communication. And we've got the way that we can also use people's intense passions as a way to fuel a curriculum and build their own curriculums. And it's a wonderful way to work with people who are neurodiverse, and again, we talked about earlier, building up, finding a journey that would suit a person and will appeal to them. So communication is speech, it's visual cues, it's the creative formats, it's the world around us. All of those things we see when we're on a journey. And tools for storytellers, as I say, they start long before you start the storytelling. You can keep notes. You can look for characters when you're on the go who bring a fiction story to life. Perhaps you're reading a book in class and you might photograph a character, or you might find something in a magazine. All those things can be uploaded, for example, into our platform or into a scrapbook. So there's many, many ways to use the world around us and the things that you're discovering for storytelling. Going back to the idea of storytelling on the go, doing the same thing and then doing it differently are wonderful ways to help children see things differently. The same walk, maybe you might do it in the morning, but then you might do it later in the afternoon, or later in twilight, or even in the evening. I think giving children choices around the curriculum, that's why we've built a platform where there are choices. You choose your setting, you choose your characters, you choose your objects. So within all those things, we make 35,000 choices, I think it was a day. Becoming confident in your choices is really important, and allowing children the freedom to make a choice within storytelling is a very powerful skill for them to have and to get used to, not being spoon-fed. Give them a space before giving them a sentence starter. Let the child create their own setting and then bring their memories and bring their feelings and bring their experiences into their story. This slide was just about noticing things and patterns and then sequencing. And I think what I might do before I jump quickly into ScribeEasy is to just explain about the golden circle. When you're using, for example, ScribeEasy and storytelling, the golden circle is the why. So why did you make that picture? let the child answer. Suddenly you've got your sentence, your opening sentence. Oh, how's that going to happen then? You've got some adjectives and you've got some nouns happening and some verbs. Suddenly you've got a framework where the learner is actually directing their own story. And it's not, So we're building active storytellers rather than passive storytellers. Shall I show you a little bit around the platform? We've got some, so ultimately we're encouraging flipped learning, entrepreneurship, products and initiatives that come out of the storytelling with ScribeEasy. So for example, the children create books, they can think about how they make their own story packs, so they could pull together a selection of images that that then they could show you around a topic that they've learned, they photographed it, rather than you giving them as a teacher the images that they need to work with. Let them go and build their research skills. The use of photography is a powerful tool for helping children start to observe. So within the platform you can photograph things and upload them. But what happens before you upload that photograph? We've got 3 examples of the same photo but just cropping in, and you can see suddenly how the storytelling changes from lots of houses and almost into blocks and shapes. So we're helping children to think differently and to feel more confident, have more freedom around their writing, to be more curious around the stories that they want to tell. The use of the story is powerful because of the use of the story arc. So within the platform we encourage children to write in chapters, so they make a picture for each chapter. Our approach is about blended learning. We're not trying to make tech do it all. There's features such as speech to text, and there's features to help with grammar and spelling. But the main thing is to help children. The story prompt is the picture that they make. And you'll be blown away by some of the stories and the patterns that start happening once you allow children to lead. This was written by a 4-year-old. After explaining this setup, so this was a class of 30, and all the children, we asked them to describe Goblin by the Crooked House. Now look at the way she's making a connection. The hunchback old goblin was as corrupt, that's come from the thesaurus. She'd written in the word bad, misshapen and crooked as the ancient stony house, and the crumbly brickwork is like the goblin's flaky skin. Now, how many adults would think to describe in such a way? And I think giving children the tools, the right tools, where they can actually use their connective thinking, their imagination, and let them drive by their interests, will start to build children that are very confident around their writing, irrespective of how well they spell or their syntax. Because once words are on the page, you've got a child, and then everything else can follow. Storytelling is also really powerful for well-being, and this was another example from a story in a school where we asked the children to describe how they're feeling, and sometimes it's quite hard to talk about different emotions and how you actually are feeling. And so this one was another example where we put a whole load of images with weather patterns, and we asked the children to find a weather background that they liked and then say a word that it made them feel. Then to put a character or an object into the platform, into the picture, and describe. And so this was a Year 4 boy, and can everyone read? I can read it out to you. Calm is like canoeing in the clouds, drifting slowly away from the sun. The sun on your neck is like a warm hand gently brushing past. The bumps of the rough roads are like the waves, slowly rising and falling from a beach far below. You can see for miles in front of you as you begin the slow descent to the world where you're really meant to be. You hit the ground with a thump and you lurch forward into reality. The world is not calm anymore. And this story really stood out for me because in that class, that boy was at the front of the class and was with a teaching assistant, and we were told he might be disruptive, and yet his story was the most moving and powerful story. So I guess I wanted to close in saying that storytelling is a very powerful tool. The use of pictures is incredibly powerful, and if we allow children the chance to imagine, sometimes it's taking a little bit of a leap of faith because there's a lot of pressure on us as teachers to feel you've got to get something out of a lesson. What have they learned? But actually, if you just wait a little bit, and there's not always the luxury of time, but allowing children the space for their imagination, to bring their memories, to bring their whole selves into their storytelling, you'll find that you've got more active writers and more active communicators. And in the classrooms we've gone into where we've asked children how they feel about their creative writing. At the beginning of the sessions, we've had a lot of, I'm not very good at spelling. It's all the negatives of what they're not good at. And the lovely thing is, after a method such as ours, where the children are allowed to invent and imagine and not worry and focus on the things that they can't do, because we're allowing them to play to their strengths, we've got children that we can just take forward. So I'd love you to come and have a look at our stand and our work and to meet us. And thank you very much for listening. Are there any questions? Or I didn't show the platform, but we've got a stand, and I guess I just wanted to give you a background about what we're about.
I'd highly recommend having a look at it. We've been using it at Charlton Park for a little while, and some students at the back have been using ScribeEasy. Sorry, I've got a bad voice. And I don't like hearing it back. But it's a fantastic tool. I mean, I'm not an English teacher, but I started using it. I can't spell, and I get distracted when I make spelling mistakes, and I found ScribeEasy brilliant. And the students I've worked with have found it really easy to get on with. The thesaurus tool in there, which I think you mentioned, is just amazing because it really broadens the students' vocabulary. And what we didn't mention as well is you've got sound effects in there. Just sometimes listening to the sound effects, you can get the children to close their eyes and say, play the sound effect, where are you now? And they'll come up with a story straight away for you. And I think that's just fantastic because then they can just talk the story and with the text, the speech to text, it just puts it in there. Before you know it, they've got something written down that they don't even realise they were writing down. And it's just great because the students often say, I can't do that. What I tell them is can't just means can, but not yet. And so it just really gets them going. And we've had some amazing stuff. A couple of students at the back here have written some amazing stories, and I think it's brilliant. I'm not an English teacher, but I love it. I think it's really good. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. I mean, well, I'm not just biased, but it started because of my son, who's dyslexic, and I could see how his confidence was going down. He felt quite labelled, but it wasn't so much that. My background's actually arts, but I could see this visual method was really appealing and was working really well with boys. And it suddenly overcame all the barriers. As my son says, it tricks you into writing. And that's what, that's what we need. It's not so much, the platform's moved on massively now. We're starting to work with different museums so that we've got an amazing picture gallery of cultural and art and all sorts of things, costumes, you name it. We've got all sorts of things in the picture gallery. It's giving us an opportunity to work with classical concert, orchestras. There's so many ways this visual storytelling is starting to take off now. And there's also analytics within the platform, so speech to text. Once words are on the page, we can actually show children the verbs they've used, the adjectives. So it's giving, again, children who might work in a very different way, they really like to see the words broken down. What adjectives are you using? How could you say that differently? it's very rich once the words are on the page, the possibilities, what we can do with words. I could talk at length about it, but we really see a difference with children and their enthusiasm, and that makes the classroom feel a lot happier. So thank you.
Thank you very much.